Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Here it is, the first week in April, and I am finally getting around to posting my favorite books of 2015. I actually had a little bit of a hard time putting together this list. I had a hard time coming up with 10 books. I had sort of a hit or miss year as far as reading goes. I read a lot of really amazing books, but then I also came across quite a few not so amazing books. But I did compile my list, and the first five books are really in no particular order, so I'm just going to get started. The first book I want to mention is The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. This book, for me, was pretty much everything that I wanted The Girl on the Train and Gone Girl to be, which was a adult mystery that was surprising and interesting and intelligent and full of surprises. I already said surprising. and just very engaging. The characters, while not the most likable I've read, still made you feel, and I was very interested to see where the story was going. Yes, Peter Swanson is great, and I am very excited to see what he comes up with next. Next up is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. It was recommended to me by several people, and I am so incredibly happy that I decided to give it a try. I loved everything about it. I loved the whole different sort of take on a magical system. I love that it was a fantasy book. The characters were awesome, and the action was fantastic. I am super excited to read the sequel, and I really need to get off my butt and do that soon. Next up on my list is obviously a book that was not published in 2015, but a book that I read in 2015, and that is Dragonfly and Amber by Diana Gabaldon. I I have sort of a love-hate relationship with Diana Gabaldon. I have a lot of problems with her writing and her choice of um, plot elements, but that's a different topic for a different video. One thing I can't deny is the power of Jamie and Claire and how I get swept up in the story whenever I'm reading an Outlander book. And for me, this is by far, so far anyway, my favorite book in the series, which is kind of odd because if you ask most Outlander fans, this is probably their least favorite, but I loved everything about it. I loved that it was different. I loved that it was more focused on the characters rather than, you know, traveling around and having adventures and stuff like that. I just pretty much loved every word of this book, and all hail the power of Jamie and Claire, that's all I can say. And while we're on the subject of Diana Gabaldon, another book that was in my list for 2015 is Lord John and the Private Matter. This is the first full-length book about a character from the Outlander world, sort of a side character, which is, after Jamie, pretty much my favorite character in the entire series. I love Lord John to death. And I have less of a problem with the Lord John books than I do with the Outlander books. I'm not really sure why that is, but Lord John is a fascinating character to me. He's so complex and so beautifully brought to life. And on the outside, he's very sort of acerbic and funny and sarcastic, and I love that about him. But underneath it all, he's very lonely and very sad and very tortured. And I just love him to pieces. He's actually one of my favorite characters in fiction of all time. Okay, next up for me is I Must Say by Martin Short. I am not much of a biography, nonfiction type reader, but I absolutely loved this book. I think part of the reason why I loved it so much is because I listened to it on audio and Martin Short narrated it, and it was just so enjoyable to hear him read the book because he did all different voices and he sang at one point, and this book really made me laugh, and it also made me cry like a baby, and that's not something that I anticipated from a biography about a comedian, but it did, and I loved it, and I love Martin Short. And we are now at my top 5 favorite books of 2015, and from now on, these books are in order of how much I loved them. And my number 5 pick is Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. Speaking of nonfiction books, this is a book of essays by a woman who is better known as the Bloggess. The thing I love about Jenny Lawson is that she can write with both humor and intelligence, but also incredible insight into what it's like to live with mental illness and anxiety disorder. And so at one minute you are just laughing yourself silly, and then the next you feel like crying because what she's writing is just so beautiful. And this book was great. It succeeded on every level. It's charming and funny, and I just love her to pieces. My number 4 pick as my favorite books that I read in 2015 is The Rose Garden by Susanna Kersley, and I have no idea why I'm talking like a radio show announcer. Susanna Kersley was one of my absolute favorite personal reading discoveries of 2015. I absolutely freaking love this woman. She is such a great author, and whereas I have a lot of problems, as I've said, with Diana Gabaldon, Susanna Kersley sort of succeeds in every way, in my opinion, that Diana Gabaldon sort of fails. And I love her to pieces. She writes historical fiction that always usually have sort of a supernatural element and a little bit of romance thrown in, but it's not mushy at all. And The Rose Garden is by far my favorite book that I've read by her. It's beautiful and poetic and wonderfully brought to life, and you feel like you're living with the characters. And it made me cry, and it made me smile, and it's just such a good book. Such a good book. My number 3 pick as favorite book that I read in 2015, and it is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I cannot begin to tell you how much I loved that story. And it's so well done, so interesting. It's a 1,000-page book, and I was not bored for a second. I also listened to this on audio, and it made me cry, especially like the last probably third of the book. I did nothing but cry, because by the time I got to that point, I was so incredibly invested in the story, and I loved the characters so much that it was sad what was going on, but I was also sad that I was coming to the end of the book because I knew I was going to miss the story and the characters, and I do. The book stands on its own, and in my opinion is the best thing that Stephen King has ever written. My number 2 pick is 2 books, because they're tied, because I can't pick a favorite out of the 2. And for the longest time, I really thought these books were going to be my favorite books of 2015, but something came along and kind of kicked its ass just slightly to the left and just nudged it out of the top spot, but it doesn't mean that I love them any less. And it is Red Rising and Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, the first 2 books in the Red Rising trilogy. I have said far too much about these books in the past, so I will spare you guys. Just suffice it to say, they're brilliant. They're pretty much near perfection. They ripped my heart out and stomped on it, and then still had me wanting more. And I love Pierce Brown. I love the series. And I am a proud Red Rising fangirl. So what was the book that managed to nudge out the Red Rising trilogy as my favorite reads of 2015? This book sort of came out of nowhere for me and knocked me on my ass, and I have been half experiencing a book hangover ever since, and it is Lumen by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This book is freaking amazing. Easily one of the best books I've ever read. Easily one of the best reading experiences I've ever had. It is totally unique. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what it's about because you need to experience it yourself, but I read it in like a 12-hour period, and hands down, my favorite book of 2015, and you guys all need to read it and tell me what you think of it in the comments, and we can fangirl about it together. Okay, you guys, that's it. That's my favorite books of 2015. I'm sorry for the delay in posting this video, but better late than never. Let me know what you think, if you've read any of the books on my list. If you want to share what your favorite reads of the year were with me, please do in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you later, and a very special shout out to Jennifer, who begged that I post a video. This was for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm a little rusty, but until next time, you guys, I will see you later. Bye!